from one of the polling stations, which seemingly shows individuals pulling suitcases of ballots from under tables where they were hidden after the GOP pollsters were pushed out. The poll watchers were pushed out of the building. Let me ask you this last question. When it comes to securing our elections, where is that going to happen? Is it going to happen in D.C. or is it going to happen in the states where all this occurred? Where do we fix this problem? A quick answer.
The Constitution requires that it's the state legislatures. This should not be a D.C. problem, and when D.C. tries to federalize the elections, they're acting in an unconstitutional manner, trying to power grab. The truth is going to come out. We continue to tell the president that, President Trump, and he is continuing to make sure that the truth will come out by putting the spotlight on all of these audits. We have to continue to fight for the truth.
And I know both of you will do exactly that. The author of Fallout, John Solomon, and the chair of the Election Integrity Alliance, Jenna Ellis, and now with Newsmax. But it's collusion of a different variety if we look at this election. Not Russian collusion, it's collusion between the Democrats and social media. Next up, a man who has brought a case against the state of California and Twitter where he alleges exactly that. Stay with us, won't you? There's lots of ways to mess with an election. You know, the old school ways, stuffing ballots, or like Joe Kennedy did for his son JFK, get dead people to vote. But this is the 21st century. Are there new ways? What about social media? So many people get their news from social media. Are they unbiased? Are they neutral? Well, apparently not. Look at this headline. There's one man, Rogan O'Hanley, who has brought a civil case against the former California Secretary of State, Alex Padilla, who's now a senator, saying that, yeah, there was actually collusion last year, but it was between the Democrats and Twitter and social media. And he's with us right now. Rogan O'Hanley, a.k.a. DC Drainer. Welcome to the Gorka Reality Check.
Thank you for having me on, Dr. Gorka. This is a very important topic. This case will help determine the rights of all Americans on social media.
So your team have used, I think, FOIA, or you've got some Freedom of Information evidence. Tell us what you found about real collusion in the last election.
Yeah, I mean, I want to give a big shout out to Judicial Watch. They were the ones that actually uncovered these documents. They did a Sunshine Records law request in California after California politicians were quoted as, with their bravado about how they had set up this misinformation takedown system. California has an Office of Election Cybersecurity that they created after the 2016 election in response to alleged foreign interference from Russians. And in classic democratic authoritarian fashion, instead of looking outwards, they then turned their sights inwards on American citizens, trying to take down what they believed was election misinformation. In my case, was my calling for an audit of California, the recent election. They have a lot of ballot harvesting, no voter ID. That targeted Senator Padilla's actions, who was Secretary of State at the time, and they took me down as a result of that criticism.
And we have evidence, thanks to Judicial Watch, your team, Hamid Dillon, and others, of the Democrats asking Twitter to take materials down that would benefit them on the long run. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we have email evidence, so we are extremely fortunate. You know, a lot of us have suspected that there was this censorship alliance running in the background between Democrats, some state governments, and big tech, and now we have smoking gun evidence. We have the emails from SKD Knickerbocker, which is a Biden PR campaign firm. They were paid by the state of California in a very sketchy bid process run by now Senator Padilla. They had misinformation daily briefings where they listed, my tweets, other tweets from President Trump and others that they deemed election misinformation. They forwarded it to the Secretary of State's office of California. Then they passed that information directly to Twitter and encouraged them to take it down. And per their quotes in periodicals, they took it down almost all the time. So they like to say, well, it's the private companies, they can do what they want. No, you are putting your finger on the scales to get this stuff taken down. We have uncovered a censorship alliance that affects not just me, so many others. We'll see what happens with this case.
Let's be clear. This is campaign consultants working with Twitter, working with the Secretary of State of California to censor the internet. That's real collusion. We've got a couple of seconds left, Rogan. Just tell us what you were very popular on social media. You had a very good game. What was the content of the tweet that got you banned? Just share it with our viewers.
The final tweet that got me banned was a picture of the Capitol with barbed wire. And at the top, I wrote, "Most votes in American history," in quotes, which, per the Democrats, is a fact. For half the country, it's a joke. And that was the one that ultimately got me permanently banned from Twitter.
Well, good luck, Rogan. With Harmeet Dillon on your side in Judicial Watch, I think you're going to shake the tree and we're going to get some truth even out of California and Twitter. But however, the Democrats have a plan. They're on the warpath. Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi want to federalize the elections. Does the GOP have a plan? Find out next here on the Gorka Reality Check. They failed for now. This week, thanks to the filibuster, there was no H.R. 1, no Senate and House federalization of the elections. But that's for now. How safe are the states from the federalization of how we choose our president? Let's find out from our two special guests. He served on the Federal Election Commission as a commissioner. Now he's with the conservative mothership, the Heritage Foundation, Hans von Spakovsky, and my former White House colleague, former deputy press secretary, now a member of the Newsmax family, Hogan Gidley. Gentlemen, welcome to the Gorka Reality Check.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
So let's start with you, Hans. There's a headline here from the New York Post that describes Pelosi's plan as was to, quote unquote, reform elections as chaos. Do you concur with the plans that they had, which I don't think they've given up on?
Oh yeah, no, they've aptly summarized that S1 would have caused chaos. It would have made us question the integrity and fairness of all future elections. It basically took all the rule changes from last year, cement them in place, and then make things even worse by doing things like avoiding all state voter ID requirements.
Hogan, you have been fighting S1, you've been fighting HR 1. Are you relieved? Do we relax? What should conservatives who are worried about what happened last year, what should they be planning?
Well, they should definitely read all of Hans's work because he has written some outstanding pieces on just how difficult our elections would be to conduct them fairly and freely because of S1. I think H4 is even worse, in part because it will be fought at the local level, so there'll be a broader issue with different districts and precincts around this country. But also the name of it is difficult to fight back on because it's called the the voting rights bill, the John Lewis voting rights bill. That's a problem in and of itself. And as you know, Rush Limbaugh always used to say, if you want to pass a bill, name it something like the Martin Luther King Memorial Bill, and they'll all have to vote for it. Otherwise, they'll be tagged as racist for voting against it. That's the playbook here. But that bill is so insidious because if you were to move a voting polling place across the street, the DOJ could come in and say, nope, that's not going to happen. We have to take over your entire election. And you saw a taste of this with them deciding to sue Georgia just now in the last hour over their voting rights bill. So this is not going to stop. It's going to continue for quite some time.
Hans, is there any question constitutionally that it is the states that run their elections? Is this something we can even debate?
Well, no. I mean, the states have been administering elections in this country since our founding. Many of the provisions of S1 were clearly unconstitutional. Unfortunately, there were some parts that, while they were bad policy, the Supreme Court might have said they were okay because, Congress does have some authority when it comes to setting the time, place, and manner of congressional elections. But many of the provisions were unconstitutional. All of them were reckless and would have endangered the integrity of the election process. I got to say, Hogan is correct. The backup plan already by the Democrats is to bring up H.R. 4. It would essentially give the U.S. Justice Department veto authority over election law changes by state legislatures. And that's almost as bad as S1.
All right. I have to ask you, Hogan, you've been fighting this fight. We're very excited to have you on board at Newsmax. Does our side, does the GOP have a plan to protect our elections so we don't see again what we witnessed last year? How confident are you?
We do, and I want to make it very clear. The federal government doesn't have the authority or the ability to conduct elections in these states. I mean, think about their wonderful work and what they've done at the post office, how we're billions of dollars in debt. They can't handle Medicare. They can't do things that big, that wholesale. And you're going to see some serious problems in these states, but Republicans are starting to fight back here. And I think that's important at the state level, because a lot of these legislatures, which, as you know, by the Constitution, has the authority to conduct their elections in these states, they are standing up and saying, we need to make sure every single legal voter and every single legally cast vote is counted. And it's not a coincidence that at the same time Democrats are pushing for this wholesale change of our election process, they're also opening our southern borders to millions of people pouring across illegally and unlawfully. And then on top of that, saying voter ID really doesn't matter. You can just vote whenever you want to. This is a serious problem moving forward. But thankfully, I think a lot of these states and people like Hans and others who are on conference calls every week, and I'm on them too, we're trying to come up with strategies, not just from a policy standpoint, from a messaging standpoint, to fight back the lies the left is telling you, because this is an 80-20 issue. 80% of the American people think you need to prove you are who you say you are when you cast a vote, just like we do in everyday life.
Well, I completely agree with you, Hogan. Everybody needs to educate.